Bitcoin is trapped in a tight range as the market braces for this week's FOMC decision. Will rate cuts spark a massive rally or a brutal sell the news crash? And what about altcoins? Are they set to surge or destined to slump? Stay right there as we take a look at Bitcoin and what it's likely to do next. Hi, this is Paul with ArcisFX with your Bitcoin update for the week. This is Bitcoin 4-hour chart, and the price action is stuck in this very tight range between about 117k and 114 on the flip side, which essentially means the price action is in no man's land, which isn't particularly helpful for traders, as we ultimately need Bitcoin to be at support for long entries, even for altcoins, or of course at the top of the range for potential short entries. And when it's just stuck in the middle, not particularly helpful, as traders struggle to get probabilities in their favor when we're not quite sure which direction Bitcoin is going to go. But we did break out of this ascending triangle back on the 10th of September, with the breakout having lovely confluence with the 200 MA on this time frame, allowing buyers to get through these sellers quite easily. But ideally want to see either a confirmed move higher from here above this range high point of control, or a retest back down to the local support with lovely confluence of the top of the ascending triangle, this trend line, and of course the 200 MA, which would be a nice entry for altcoin longs or Bitcoin itself. But let's have a look at what is exactly going on. You can see more clearly on this time frame that the price action is stuck in this very tight range between this upper resistance level, which is essentially a line in the sand for bullish continuation, and the 50 MA. This is the daily 50 MA for clarity, not the 12-hour, squeezing the price action of sorts in this very narrow range. Ideally you want to see it come back down here, which is essentially the top of that triangle we were just looking at. But until we get a move either up or down, as I just said, very difficult trading. And for a slightly different perspective, we'll switch to the 2-hour chart, where we can see there's some problems for the price action at the moment. So we have the daily 50 MA, as we've just established, acting as support for the price action, but the most buyers of course are going to be looking to enter around here at around 113k in this nice little pocket, which is flush with the neckline of this ascending triangle and this inverse head and shoulders pattern, plus the 4-hour 200 MA, providing this exactly where we want to see the price action for any long plays. But of course, if the price action does descend down to this too soon, then we're going to be stuck again in another tight range between this time the 4-hour 200 MA and the daily 50 MA, which will just put us in exactly the same place we are now, just a little bit lower down. But at least then we're not going to be in no man's land, and we're going to have buyers looking to come in at this area. So not ideal situation for Bitcoin at the moment, but this little area does have multi-time frame confluence, as we've already established. If we just switch back to here, of course, you can see, double bottom neckline here, plus the ascending triangle on the 4-hour, plus the 200 MA. But if we switch to this chart, another 4-hour chart, a more simple 4-hour chart, you can see we've also got a golden cross in play as well, suggesting of course that we have quite a lot of bullish momentum in this area. Plus, if you notice, we now have a double bottom on the RSI just around the median line, which of course suggests we could see a nice move up from here. But buyers are always looking to come in at support, and when Bitcoin is not quite there yet, this is where it needs to be, around 113k, there's going to be hesitancy in the market. Hence why you can see with these order blocks, the price action again is getting squeezed. So Bitcoin needs to decide on a direction, but this is the place where we most likely are going to see a bounce. But there are scenarios, of course, where we could see a move up from here. But why hasn't the price action made a move just yet? Well, there's some other mitigating factors. We have FOMC this week, or if you're watching this a bit later, we've had FOMC this week, which of course, in the run up to crypto, stocks, all different types of assets are going to be waiting with bated breath to see if we do get that 0.25 rate cut, or even potentially more this week. And as a result, a lot of traders are going to stay on the sidelines until we've got clarification as exactly what's going to be happening in terms of the interest rates out of the United States, which is another reason why Bitcoin is just sitting pretty and waiting. But you can see if we do get the news we want, we could of course have a move up. But there is also something to be fearful of. There's a concept which is buy the rumor, sell the news. And you might think that if we do get confirmation of interest rate cuts this week, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have a move up. Because if most traders over the last few weeks have seen this priced in, then this bullish move here is based on the knowledge that we're probably going to get interest rate cuts. But then when we actually get the news event, we could see a bit of a sell-off as people take profits. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, but there's no guarantee we're going to have a strong move up. But that would, of course, be my suggestion, because, of course, lower interest rate cuts are very good for crypto in general, for risk assets. But caution here, please. I'm certainly holding off entering my positions with any gusto until we've got clarity. And that may mean wait to see what the reaction is for FOMC this week, and then look to attack the market next week early on once we have clarification. So we're not caught in any of these news pumps or these news dumps or whatever is going to happen as a result. So beware of the volatility which is coming, but just to, of course, underscore the potential for Bitcoin going forward. This is the daily chart, which has this nice symmetry of the potential price action. And if we just move this out the way just for a moment, you can see we've had this nice strong bounce off this diagonal trend line. And if we can move up from here, we could, of course, see the sort of move like this, taking us way above previous all-time highs of about 124, 125k. So this is the move which bulls are looking for. But if you want some historical precedent to back up this potential bullish play, then this is January 2024, and we have a very similar pattern now. And we had a breakout of this diagonal trend line, a move up to retake this horizontal level, a little bit of a retrace, which in this case would be to about 113k. Again, there's that multi-time frame confluence we were talking about with that level, and then a move up from there. So currently that scenario is playing out again. And for any bears looking at this, you need to understand that this is the weekly 50 MA all the way down here, which is a key inflection point for bullish continuation. And of course, Bitcoin is nowhere close to 95, 96k at the moment. So the bulls certainly have the narrative. And if we do see a retrace, of course, we do need the price action to bounce at 113k and not lose this level again, as that would, of course, negate this potential prediction. But just to have a quick look at this chart, as there was a serious bearish scenario doing the rounds a few weeks ago, which was to suggest, of course, that Bitcoin's price action was going to repeat this movement, which we saw at the start of the year, which meant, of course, a stronger retrace all the way back down to that 97, 96 level, which, of course, would represent touching this key inflection point and putting the bullish narrative at risk. But I'm quite relieved to see, of course, we have had the price action break above this diagonal trend line, which suggests, of course, this isn't going to happen. And if we just zoom in, it's not, of course, the strongest break, but we have broken above it and we are trying to find our feet. On the flip side, another reason why a little bit of a dip down to 113k, a little bit of a wick and a move up could be on the cards. So for those of you which were looking at this as a potential bearish scenario, currently we may be in the process of invalidating that idea completely, which of course is another win for the bulls. But let's quickly check in with Bitcoin dominance to see what the money flow is doing and how it's impacting the altcoin market. So this is Bitcoin dominance 4-hour chart. And just a reminder that, of course, if the price action is heading down in a downtrend, that essentially is good for altcoins, which is why you see green candles when it's heading down as opposed to red. And if it's heading upwards, orange, that's Bitcoin season essentially. Now, we've of course been in a downtrend for a while now, which we've been waiting for a long time. But the last few days, of course, have seen altcoins stumble a little bit. But this, of course, highlights the waiting game at the moment as traders are waiting for FOMC. And this is representative, of course, of people not entering their positions for altcoins, which is allowing the market to dip a little bit in that respect. But presuming we get the news we want this week, we could, of course, see this continue lower as it has. And every time there's been a possible reversal pattern, you see this descending channel, which has a 70 to 80% chance of a break to the upside, didn't quite manage to take off. And this double bottom also wasn't confirmed, which is implying, of course, that the first phase or so of altcoin season is currently in play as Bitcoin dominance descends lower and the altcoin market grows. And just to show you the big picture, this is Bitcoin dominance daily. This is an uptrend which Bitcoin dominance has been in for over 2.5 years. And this represents, of course, inconsistent gains for altcoins, as ultimately the altcoin market is steadily shrinking, or at least Bitcoin is growing at a much faster rate compared to the rest of the altcoin market. So this obviously doesn't mean the altcoin market hasn't had its pumps. You can see here, this is November 2024 when the indices action broke down. This gave altcoins very strong moves following the election in the United States at the back end of last year. But then those gains were very quickly erased with the biggest liquidation event in crypto history as Bitcoin dominance faked out this move and moved up again. But this confirmed break, which we saw back in July, where now the price action, the indices action, is now in a confirmed downtrend, which should be providing altcoins with more sustained gains, meaning that they are heading upwards. And every time they retrace, it is not a complete reset. It is making a move. And instead of retracing 100% back to where it was within a couple of months, we're seeing the altcoin market move upwards, have a normal retrace of 40 to 50%, and then moving up again. But of course, that doesn't mean that Bitcoin dominance can't flip again and do this before continuing higher. So we do need to be cautious. But right now, everything's looking pretty good for the altcoin market, especially as we have data also highlighting that Ethereum is now firmly outpacing Bitcoin as well. And it has been since July, which, guess what, coincided with this breakdown of Bitcoin dominance. So altcoin season is definitely here, but is it going to continue? I guess the news this week is going to help determine that. But that's it for now. I'm Paul with ArcisFX. I'll be back at the end of the week with a live stream on Friday, where we'll jump into the market and some altcoin setups in a little bit more detail. But that's it for now. Catch you in the next one.